welcome to our very, very special event here this evening in Focus Ceili Bands of Ulster, and you're also very welcome to Dromore, those of us that have joined us this evening and have travelled some distance. I know many of you have been involved in the fun run and walk there that has just happened. I would love to have done it myself this evening, but I've done a few not so fun runs and walks over the last couple of days. But that's what it takes to have the Ulster Fleadh here in Dromore, and it's just fantastic. And I think what we started off there, I hope you recognise, it was probably never done before, having members of all three Ulster Senior All-Ireland Ceili Band champions playing a selection of tunes together. So a very special moment for us, I suppose, to start that night and to start our focus here this evening. So thanks a million for joining us. I'm sure we'll hear plenty of music over the course of the night. We're going to talk a bit about Ceili bands. We'll talk a bit about our instruments and our various bands which we played in as well. But first of all, as you can see the bands on the stage there, we were looking a bit more handsome then, weren't we, Seamus? All great pictures there. You can see the you can see the Knockmore Ceili Band to the top right of the screen, led by Maggie Maguire. We're delighted Maggie's joining us here this evening. We have the Pride of Erin Ceili Band in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, led by the late great Sean Nugent. We'd like to take a moment just to remember the passing of Sean's brother Francie. If you could all hold a moment's silence just to remember Francie Nugent here this evening. And finally, in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, we have the Blackwater Ceili Band. The Blackwater hailing from the Clogher Valley region of County Tyrone, and although I'll be talking to some of the members of the Blackwater Ceili Band, I must also declare an interest that I am also a member of the Blackwater Ceili Band, but I'll try and do it as fairly when I'm going through all the bands, and I've certainly grown up listening to the Pride of Erin and the Knockmore as well, so great Ceili band. I'd like to start at your very, very extreme left. He's a gentleman we've just welcomed to see a lot more of in Dromore. He's from just up the road in Trillick, a great friend of us all here in Dromore and a fantastic piano player, is Ronan Warnock. Ronan was the piano player in the Knockmore Ceili Band right through, and he won the All-Ireland title with the Knockmore Ceili Band in 2014. So Ronan Warnock from Trillick. Next to Ronan, we have Maggie Maguire. Maggie Maguire is also no stranger to Dromore. Maggie is the driving force behind our Ceili bands and Group of Ceol in Dromore in the Coltis branch here, and has been involved in various events of different natures, and so we'll go through some of them later, I'm sure. And definitely no stranger to Dromore, and that's Maggie Maguire. Next to Maggie Maguire in the centre here, he's hiding a piano accordion at his feet. I don't know why he's hiding it. All the way from Eskra, County Tyrone, we have Dr. Ryan Hackett. Ryan has come from Perth, Australia, to join us here for the Ulster Fleadh. He's just recently returned. His suntan is fading ever so slightly, but he tells me there's a good bed in Oma that he can get a topped up one. So Ryan Hackett, the leader of the Blackwater Ceili Band. Beside Ryan here, and only over the road in the Clogher Valley still, we also have the button accordion player in the Blackwater Ceili Band, Dr. Michael Kern. Michael's prepared some of the items on the table here for you, as you can see, and I should have said that also at the start. There's a number of artifacts here for anybody up the back if you're interested in seeing some of the thrower articles, for example, on the Pride of Erin, or some of the records. They will be available on the table. So big introduction for Michael Kern from 5 Men Town. And very specially and poignantly this evening, we're joined by Seamus MacDonald from the Pride of Erin Ceili Band. Twice All-Ireland Ceili Band winners, something that we can't say in the Knockmore or the Blackwater. The Pride of Erin were a band very, very closely associated with this area. In fact, probably even this pub as well, and this town. The Pride of Erin won the All-Ireland title in 1983 and 85, am I right in saying, Seamus? So give a big warm welcome to Seamus McDonald. To what a Ceili Band is, many of you will know, but some of you may not know. A collection of melody instruments, fiddles, flutes, accordions, as you see here in front of you. But what holds those instruments together is a core of drums and piano as well. And that's what differentiates Ceili Bands and the particular sound of the Ceili Bands, I suppose, in terms of from other types of music as well. And the Ceili Bands would have been formed to play for dances, both sets and Ceili dances as well, which were popular throughout the period. And it's one of the oldest, I suppose, forms or collections of performed Irish music with roots over 100 years. Now, moving along just to Ceili Bands within Ulster, I suppose, before our time. One of the most prominent Ceili Bands in Ulster was the great McCusker brothers from County Armagh. As you can see on stage, we're lucky to have the photograph here. And that was obviously a great evolution through the 30s, through to the 50s. And Ceili Bands actually provided the stepping stone into the show band era as well. So it's important to remember that as well. And that'll form a part of the Pride of Erin story, of course, as well, I think, later on.
During the lockdown, or one of the lockdowns last year, going on 2 years ago now, I was just rooting on the internet, as you do, at night time there, and trying to find music and old recordings and old tunes, and I just got thinking about the Pride of Erin, and I knew that there was recordings. There was very little online. In actual fact, in recent times, there's been more stuff has come up online on Facebook and social media, which we'll talk about later. But I did come across, I knew that they had made a couple of recordings, and I did a bit of searching, and lo and behold, I did find on the internet a couple of copies of the LPs that they did release. They released 2 LPs in the late 70s. The first one was one called Fermanagh Ceili, it's on the table there, and the second one that I have here is one called Harvest Time in Ireland. So later on, folks, feel free to have a look. What really drew me and attracted me to these was the information on the back. Of course, CDs we're all well used to nowadays. Even today, CDs are getting beyond usable. A lot of cars now don't even have the CD player in the car. So to see these LPs is definitely something to behold. But the photographs and the information on them is what really would strike you, and definitely anyone from the local area here, you'd see the photos of maybe Sean Nugent himself, Margaret McElhone, of course, who lived down the street, fantastic singer. I'm going to play a bit of a track of her singing here shortly, and also the other Nugents, Brendan and Rosemary McElhone as well, all fantastic singers. So yeah, I think it'll be very fitting actually to, like, there is a song from Rosemary, there's a song from Brendan on this, The Shores of Lough Erne, but I think because we're in here in Dromore, and I have fond memories of Margaret singing at the Dromore sessions up in the old Chapel Hall years ago. A fantastic singer, and she actually sings the title track of this LP, Harvest Time in Ireland, and of course that was written by the fantastic Felix Kearney, the local poet from Drumquin, and who of course was a relation and a connection to the Nugents as well. So, and of course the great thing about Felix's poems and songs, great inclusion of place names and a real sense of home. We know some of his fantastic songs, Mashrock and the Glen, Dancing in Glenrowan is on this as well, and of course with Harvest Time in Ireland he mentions County Tyrone. Later on in the song it mentions some of the local places as well. So that's just a snapshot of the late 1970s and the LPs. For any of the younger members in the audience, that that's what they listen to music nowadays. It's all on the phones and the internet, but that's it for now, James.
Thanks very much, Michael, and great to hear some of the old records there as well from the Pride of Erin. We're going to speak to Seamus here now, Seamus McDonald from the Pride of Erin. You're very welcome, Seamus. Give you this. So we'll be able to hear you. No, just Seamus, on the Pride of Erin, I suppose you joined the Pride of Erin possibly at a late stage, but what would have been the origins of the band? I'm looking up here on the screen, we have a picture of the Pride of Erin on the right hand side of the screen, And then of course we have yourself in the dapper blue blazer, is it, or a green blazer at that stage. Could you maybe talk me through the origins or the...
Sean formed that band in the Pride of Erin in 1965, and previous to that Francie Murphy had it in Plymouth Town over in 1960. So Sean took it over and called it the Pride of Erin again in 1965. And from then on, Francie Murphy was the only one who came across from Plymouth Town in that band to join Sean's Pride of Erin.
So Francie Murphy was actually your partner in the Pride of Erin at the time?
Partner in crime.
Partner in crime. So maybe you might just take me through the members of the Pride of Erin. I'm not sure that all the members are just on the screen here. They may have been missing.
There's one missing.
Great Francie Quinn, was it? Or
Francie Quinn was missing that day. That was recorded there in Tyrone in Dublin, 1986. So we had Mary Mulholland on the piano, and Paddy Colgan on the drums, and then you had Sean on the fiddle, and Philly Kearney on the fiddle, and Francie Murphy on the box, and myself, and Bridge Downey on the flute.
fantastic. And I suppose behind the band there would have been some main or prominent characters as well, I suppose. Of course, Sean Nugent, and we're remembering Sean over the course of the Fleadh. He's a big part of who we are as a branch in Dromore as well, a former member here in Dromore, of course. But apart from Sean, I noticed there we were talking there about the earlier records as well. I think Sean McCusker actually recorded maybe in some of the records as well. And there was others like maybe Billy Rush and even the late Lawrence Quinn, I suppose, would have played, or they would have been behind Sean or given them ideas or inspiration maybe perhaps.
Sean McCusker was in the Fermanagh Ceili record, played the flute in it. Charlie O'Donnell, the rest of them, he was on fiddle as well. And then the rest of the members were, you know, as the band as it was then in 1980.
So obviously, Seamus, you're familiar with the Ceili band style now and how bands have evolved between the Pride of Erin and now. How would you describe the style of music which we just heard there from the Pride of Erin, or what was it that you set out to do, or your brand of music as such?
Well, the brand of music then was for Ceili's, for Fear Ceili.
For Fear Ceili,
yeah.
But not Set Ceili.
Not Set Ceili for definite, yeah. It was a lot sharper and faster than I did for the sets. And a lot of the members weren't getting any younger.
So we all share that preference.
So the music that was played then was for Fear Ceili, Siege of Annis and all that, you know, so the sets took over then.
Okay, yeah, the sets moved on, but I suppose that would have been a historical thing where Fear Ceili in the north would have been more popular and sets maybe in the south.
That's right.
Was more popular. But at the same time, the great sets bands in the south, the Tullahs, the Kilfloras, and the Ormond, of course, the Paddy O'Brien bands, you then locked horns with those great Ceili bands at Flacklow and Hearn, each year competing as well.
Yeah, we locked horns with Paddy O'Brien and his Ormond Ceili band so many times because they were the cream and barley down there, and it was not an easy one when Paddy O'Brien was around.
I was speaking in Tipperary back in May to the Archduher, Darius O'Murhu, about this night and explained that we were going to put a focus on the Pride of Erin, and he said to me that there was never a cheer lit up since in the venue since the Pride of Erin won the title in 1983 for the first time, because it had been such a road to that first title. And I suppose there had been hardships along the way, of course, too.
Well, there was a lot of hardship, there was a lot of not placed, and then getting second for third. And then finally in 1983 in Kilkenny, it happened.
Okay.
So it was a good achievement, for the band in that day.
And then, of course, did the Pride of Erin go back in 1984 to compete?
Back in 84 and got second to the Ormond. And then back in 1985 in the Stole again to get first place.
So not a lot of people would actually be aware of the fact that, you know, although you come second in 1984, it was still a huge achievement to be performing at that level.
Yeah.
I suppose first place in 1983, second place in 1984, and then first place champions of Ireland once again in 1985. And what was, after you won the All Ireland, what happened then? Was there phone calls from the RTE?
Yeah, that
BBC maybe not so much.
That broadcast came after the 1985 winning.
Yes.
There was a couple of broadcasts done. That came after one 84, and then that one there was 86.
So that was actually 86, the year after you won. And we might actually be able to see a bit from this broadcast. Where was that recorded? Could you tell me, Seamus?
Tyrone.
In the culture in Dublin. Just in front of the fireplace there, was it?
That's right.
Yeah. But Seamus might tell us here, Seamus, Sean Nugent, in terms of a music teacher, and I suppose even passing on the music that we've learned today, our music teachers, how prolific was Sean in terms of his coverage of Tyrone and Fermanagh and teaching music?
He was teaching across the two counties. I think most people who were learning then, Sean was teaching them. So it was, and even their competitions, a lot of youngsters into the competitions, and Sean's band there I think won the Ireland as well.
Can you tell us any of the names of this band here, Seamus?
I'm not faced
Not too sure. Not too sure. Brendan McCann would have been in this band, yeah. There's Sean there himself. Of how Sean passed on his music, and I suppose another even more important way that Sean passed on his music for us all, and the most important way that we're going to talk about tonight, was his composition. Sean was involved in composing tunes as well.
Yeah, he composed quite a few tunes. A lot of them were in the book The High Hills of Largy. He composed the marches for the band that won the Ireland, and the reels, and the jig.
So the year you won All Ireland, was that the Pride of Erin march that you played?
That's
from
right.
this book?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was 1983.
Okay. So that provides us then with a direct connection to 2014, is that correct? Where the Knockmore Ceili band, which was the second ever Ceili band from Ulster, but also following the footsteps of the Pride of Erin, the second Ceili band from County Fermanagh, and they actually played the same march at the All Ireland. So that's how much of a legacy that one man left on this area, and I suppose we'll cover that somewhat later. But we might play a bit for you now. We'll play maybe a few notes of the Pride of Erin march. Seamus McDonald here from the Pride of Erin Kitty Band just said to me there in passing, he says, little did Sean Nugent think that so many years later that a band from his own Fermanagh would have actually went and played that march and won an All-Ireland with it. So I'll just share a couple of words now. I introduced this woman before. We'll maybe give Ronan Warnock a microphone when we get a chance, Gary, when you're finished down there. But Maggie Maguire, all the way from Derrygonley, County Fermanagh. Maggie, the Knockmore Ceili Band, an incredible legacy back there. But could you tell me maybe about the origins of the band, or how it come about, or who decided that we were going to form a Ceili band and what we were going to do with it and where we were going to go?
Well, I suppose the band is obviously from Derrygonley, and that's where it all started back in 2018. Right? No? 2009. But then I suppose previous to that, I was actually in a Drumore Ceili band, a senior Ceili band, the year before that, where I was playing the drums.
Okay.
And then I've always played in Ceili bands, and our families have all, and Ronan had played in Ceili bands. So I suppose my first senior Ceili band competition was actually with the Drumore band, and it's funny back here now.
So it's more connections as well, and that was obviously a Tyrone band, with some more in Tyrone bands later on. But I suppose, looking at the lineup there, your brother Christopher looks fairly chuffed with himself. But I suppose starting a Ceili band when you have a third of it in the house already, it must have been a good starting block, and these were all at home at that time, I suppose, under Sean and Betty's watchful eye. But I suppose it was a good starting block, and then you were able to form the members in around that, or the membership from close friends as well.
Yeah, very much so, because I suppose at that time we were very much, if you look at the people up there, we were all running about together. We were between going to Middletown Malby, going to festivals. I remember the first time I heard Ronan playing the piano was at a wedding in Trillick, and Christopher actually was in Lochderg, and he heard this piano player, and we were all chatting about who in God's name is this piano player, and lo and behold, the same piano player we were both talking about, and then we made friends with Ronan, and then after that, I suppose that was when the band was formed that very year, and having three, I suppose, in the one house was kind of having a good foundation. And then, I'm looking up there, Michael Kerr and sure.
Yeah, would you mind just introducing them maybe from this? I know, of course, Tomas Quinn, many of you will know as our local banjo player, of course, a member of the Whistling Donkeys as well as an Knockmore Ceili band. But maybe you'd take me across the people in that photograph, Maggie, after you lifted the All-Ireland in 2014.
So starting here is Tomas Quinn from Drumore, and then next is Chris Maguire, my brother. But at that time, Quinn was down the back, and he was definitely running us all around the roads to sessions and stuff. So we were all playing a lot of music with Tomas. And then next up then is Kieran Leonard, who Michael and also went to school with. And then myself, and then Michael Kerr then from Galway and Tyrone. And as I say, we were all at the Fleadh together. And then down here beside Lorena is Ashley McPhillips, who now is Ashley Norada. And she actually would have been teaching a lot of music in Fermanagh at the time. Next then is Lorena, and then Ronan. And then we have Maria Conley, who is a fine singer from Newtown Butler. And she had actually played in a 15-18 band with all of us when we were younger. And then next now is, I suppose, Lorena's husband, and that is Kieran Hannah, who is obviously a legend when it comes to the music world with the Hannah family.
So that must have been a good story. So you actually had a marriage as well as an All-Ireland title from the band. Is the marriage still intact for everybody in the audience?
There could have been many stories in that band.
Gary, would you mind giving Ronan a mic if you get a chance? Oh, he has one. I wasn't sure if you had one or not, Ronan. Ronan Warnock had a microphone. Maggie said there could be many's a story. Ronan might tell us a story or two, would you, Ronan?
No, whatever happened on the way and afterwards stays with us, that's it.
Yeah.
We had many a great night, and especially I suppose after we won the All-Ireland, then I suppose that year after we won, it was, I suppose you were invited to a lot of concerts to do Ceilis and everything like that. So it was, and thankfully, yeah, we were practically all around home. Nobody was away, so everybody was able to be there and kind of do all those concerts. So it was a great year of celebrating and just playing plenty of music and that, you know.
Indeed, with fantastic memories of the Knockmore Ceili band at our last Fleadh here back in 2015. So you would have won the All Ireland obviously in Sligo in 2014. You came here and you headlined the stage actually, the gig rig stage, and you played a set Ceili down in the hall. So fond memories of that. And I suppose back at that time, what was the focus? Was it sets, Ceilis, or concerts, or a bit of a mixture of both? Or?
Yeah, I suppose it was a bit of a mixture of both. Yeah, it was a nice mix. I suppose there was a lot of concerts and that, a lot of kind of formal concerts. And then we were invited over to Leeds as well. They had a kind of an anniversary over in Leeds CCE, so they invited us over for the weekend there. So you kind of functions like that where I suppose they were excited to get another Ireland winning band, I suppose, over. I'm sure for us it was a week.
I'm sure if it was anything like the weekend Blackwater spent in Leeds, it would have been an exciting weekend. But fantastic memories, you know, and meeting great friends as well.
And I think it's great at the time, but it's as you get older and you look back on all that time, I suppose you appreciate it more as you get older. You realise the good times you had back then, and I suppose you get older and you have more ties and maybe less time to do more of that stuff, so you kind of appreciate.
But the friendships and the relationships are still there.
All there. That's the great thing I suppose about the band, is that we're all so friendly still and all just keep in touch, and we can pull everybody together very quickly to do a concert.
So I remember watching concerts with Knockmore back in that sort of 2014, 2015 stage. Your concert performance was not just we're doing Ceili band doing a selection of jigs, with Ceili band doing a selection of reels. You like to vary up the show, and maybe I'll put this to Maggie. You had a number of singers in the band to start off with. Of course, yourself, Lorena.
My singing days are well gone.
No. But you were blessed to have a number of singers within the band, and then also, we'll focus on singing first. So, just I suppose Maria Conley and Lorena would have been, I suppose, the two main singers. Would that have been fair to say in the band?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like Maria Conley's from a legacy of singers, so we're very lucky to have Maria, and Maria has that distinct style herself. Not only traditional, she can do a bit of everything, and then Lorena kind of was on the other side. She could sing maybe an Irish modern song, you know, and then with Ronan accompanying, you know, it was added that I suppose that added a wee bit something different. We could do that. That's the thing we did do. I don't know if you remember this. Like we used to all sing. Like the whole band would sing a song and do bits of harmonies, and yeah, it was great, you know.
I remember fondly in our Kjol group that you put together, where you actually had Michael Kern and Christopher Maguire singing in together, maybe at one point as well.
In harmony.
Unfortunately, Christopher's not here tonight, unless he's up the back somewhere. We could probably get a verse of that there. But moving on from songs to tunes, and away from the formal reels and jigs, you also took a few slow pieces with the band as well, and you had a particular interest, I suppose, with compositions from around home, and there was a couple of compositions I think in tribute maybe to the fiddler McCoy and things like that there with it.
Well, that was one of the things with the band, because we wanted to play music that was local to the area, and playing music of Sean Nugent was very important to us, because that book of Sean Nugent's tunes was like a bible to me for a long time, and still is with the young kids. And then there's some great composers in from Anna, like you've got Jim McGrath and Kevin Lachlan, who we played a lot of their tunes. So with Jim wrote a lovely waltz called The Fiddler McCoy. McCoy was obviously from Derrygonley, and he would have been brother of Laurie Hoy, who actually played in the Acero Ceili band, who played with Seamus Sweeney, who would have been involved in our band. And
who's
then,
on the picture here, just with
in the middle. And then like Kevin Lachlan, who is from Billick, has wrote amazing tunes, and those tunes are important to play them, and that's important to our band. And I think that's why we like to be that wee bit different, to kind of focus on those things and make them, put them out there.
We may try a bit of that. We'll try to get that Fiddler McCoy maybe. If that's alright. Just to get. So we spoke there about the All-Ireland, the aftermath of the All-Ireland, but also you were covered well, I suppose, at the time. The Knockmore was well known across different, we spoke there about the Pride of Ireland, their media performance. I think you actually had a couple of series following the course of the band and maybe following a couple of practices and things like that. What was that experience like, or how did that come about?
So yeah, we were on a key, like I can't remember the name of that show. Yeah. Sorry about it, yeah, that was it was interesting. It was actually quite intense because you're trying to practice and you've got your goal is to get to the All-Ireland and be able to play, and their goal is to get a TV show. And like any wee bit of drama, they were all over it, I suppose.
Love Island sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They followed us to, like that year they went to Milltown, they went to Drumshambo. I remember, I'll never forget ringing Mummy and saying, Mummy, they're coming up to the house. And she, like, if panic stations, you daren't open a cupboard in our kitchen because everything was in it.
Was all the diggers washed?
Everything was done. So yeah, that was good. But it was, as I say, it was tough going because they really wanted a band. They wanted the band to win the All-Ireland, and that put extra pressure on us, I suppose, at the time. And we were still very young, and we were still very much learning.
Yeah.
And then we were on BBC Keely Band show as well, but kind of focused more on Kieran Leonard and his orchestra work at that time. And then we were on BBC right a few times with Lynette Faye, and then we were on Fleadh last year. So it's like we've had plenty of TV performances and radio performances, which is great. It keeps everything together.
Yeah, so I think you said as well, so you were on the Fleadh TV programme and that was recorded in Sligo last year for the Fleadh Fest, is that correct?
Yeah.
We don't. It is online for you to see. Unfortunately, we're not able to get it here this evening. You can find it on the Knockmore Keely Band Facebook page. That's recording from the Fleadh programme from last year in Sligo, and that must have been an interesting experience so many years after, I suppose, 2014, 2015, pulling everybody, the entire original lineup come back together for that recording. So that must have been an interesting piece of work, but a very worthwhile exercise. I'm sure it was great to get playing tunes back with the group again.
It definitely was. It was great. It was unreal, actually, wasn't it? It was brilliant. But our band has very much progressed on a bit. We mightn't play the really Keely Band style of music anymore. We do. It's definitely rooted in what we're doing, but we do try and push the boundaries, and I think we pushed the boundaries in the Keely Band competition. We were known for doing that, but and when you have the likes of Kieran Leonard, who is very much from that orchestra background, we're very lucky that he can do all those cool jazzy things. And when you got Ronan here, who does not keep it simple when it comes to playing the piano, he likes to do his thing too, which is amazing. But like you've got Kieran Hanna, who's quite a jazzy concertina player. There's nothing too traditional about the whole thing, really.
Well, they all come from great traditional line hoods. There's no denying that there, but it's fantastic. And then you regrouped recently as well for a performance at the Fermanagh Fleadh, wasn't that right? And you've sort of new blood in as well, and mixing it up as well. You're not afraid to draw people in, and I suppose your work with younger Keely bands, it's never really left you, the Keely band bug, has it?
No, unfortunately not. No, and like as I say, it's great to be able to pull in people who can play with us, because like I see Patrick Tracy down there, and like Paddy has played in Keely bands with us since he was a youngster, and now
there's a lorry parked outside somewhere. Patrick, we might need to move that lorry shortly.
But having the likes of Patrick just to slot in, he knows what we're about, he knows the style, he gets it. And Molly, was also in the band, so. But like different players come and go. Like we've had George play with us, you're a drummer and different ones. So.
Of course, yeah. So there is crossover there, and we're all Ulster musicians, and I suppose there is a close connection there as well. I know we spoke about some Sean Nugent reels earlier on, just before we started playing. There was one of Sean Nugent reels you actually played, I think, in the competition, was there? Or?
Yeah, we played it in Drumore one year. It was, I think it's just called Sean Nugent's March. Or no, Sean Nugent's
March. I read. Just
remember
we put that read? Even the first part of it? Was it?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. Thanks very much. It's great to share the tunes and great to share the old tunes as well and share the legacy that exists across the three bands. There probably is a story behind that tune as well, Maggie. We might not have covered the 2013 Fleadh in Derry. That was a very, very important Fleadh for a lot of reasons, but it was an important Fleadh for the Knockmore Ceili band. I suppose that's when you really rose to prominence at that point, maybe in 2013.
Yeah, that was the year of Derry, which I don't think anybody will ever forget the Fleadh in Derry. And I suppose that was the year of the recall. And I suppose like any band, you have your release practice for the actual
Just to explain to everybody in the room, in case you aren't familiar with band competitions, of course we explained earlier about each band competes in the All-Ireland, but this was a particular freak event, you might say. It doesn't happen too often, where the adjudicators actually tie on a score and they actually have to go back and they ask the two bands that end up on the tie to perform again, but rather than allowing them to play the same selection of tunes that they played before, you must produce another selection of tunes. So it's a very daunting and I suppose scary experience at the time, and wasn't one that was expected.
It hasn't happened since. I don't think it was a long time happening before that.
We'll come on to that. There's more stories to come.
But I suppose I always remember I was sitting beside Ronan, and I seen that was the only year there was a bar at the Ceili band competition, and I knew where most of my members of the band were, and I knew Ronan was beside me, and so there was a long delay for the results, and I said, God, Ronan, what's going on here? And I think you said to me just before the recall, or just before they announced that we're going to have a recall, and Ronan just goes, Jesus, we're in this. And then trying to gather up the band members who were maybe at the bar was an open challenge. But yeah, we got up and we played that day, and the Moyler County Roscommon Ceili band, they were tied with us, so they came out on top that day. So they got 3 firsts and we got 2 firsts. So. And at the end of the day, I think when we look back on what we played, it was very much us just playing and having. I do remember walking onto the stage and be like, we have to go on here and just have a bit of crack, because this is what it's about, and that's what we did very much. So
yeah, fantastic. So eventually, then you won the title in 2014, but that's fantastic. We're going to continue on now. I suppose staying on the local theme. We spoke a lot about Sean Nugent, but. A person that we're sort of looking into as well at this Fleadh is Felix Kearney, I suppose for his great songs and his poems, but also Felix's son Arthur wrote a couple of fantastic tunes as well, and one of them which I believe the Pride of Erin played, and the Blackwater played, and possibly the Knockmore played, I'm not sure, at some point, but we'll continue now with a great march, the Centenary March. talking there a long time about Fermanagh bands, but of course great Tyrone membership across the bands as well. And partially the reason why we're having this event in Dromore tonight is because we were lucky in Dromore Coltis. There's only ever been 3 Ceili bands to win from Ulster to win the All-Ireland title, and all 3 of the bands have featured members of Dromore Coltis. So fair play to the members historically of Dromore Coltis. In terms of Ceili bands in Tyrone, there has been a picture there before. We had a great history in terms of bands which went on to move. Michael has done, I know, a degree of study on this. Bands such as the Old Cross with John O'Neill, which featured of course Philomena Bagley before they moved on later to the show bands as well. But I suppose one for more recent years was the Torrent Ceili band. And we're very lucky on the table of artefacts here at the front to actually have a picture of the Torrent Ceili band. The members are there on the front of it. Most of them I should know. With John O'Neill, Sharon McDermott, Donna Herson, Hughie Hetherington, Claire McChrystal, Mark Mohan, Damien Cullen. I missed out John McGurn, R.I.P. Yeah, you have some history in John McGurn. John was from where, Michael? Garrison. Also Kevin Casey in that band as well, I believe, in drums. So that picture is there at the front. That's the Torrent Ceili band. The Torrent Ceili band come very, very close to denying the Blackwater Ceili band from being the first Tyrone Ceili band, because the Torrent Ceili band actually placed second in the All-Ireland Ceili band competition. And that's why it's important to give them a mention. I believe they placed second in the competition in 2001, is that correct? So fantastic musicians there in the Torrent Ceili band, and well worth looking into if you do have time. I think there is some clips of the Torrent Ceili band available on YouTube now, isn't there? So starting off there with a piece, the Centenary March. I think I might have missed some hops and jumps in a few of them tunes, would be the Knockmore tunes or Pride of Erin tunes. We might be a bit out of practice, but I suppose, Ryan, for everyone in the room, the origins of the Blackwater Ceili band, how it came about, was it a group of friends or was it a wider network of session musicians, or how did it happen?
Well, I suppose the Blackwater Ceili band started maybe in 2014, around the time the Knockmore were coming to their pinnacle. We were starting to think about a senior band at that stage, and that all probably stemmed back from doing underage bands at the time. Through the Clogher Valley branch, a good few of us were playing together in underage bands for years, and I suppose the core nucleus of the Blackwater probably came from the Christian Brothers in Omagh, with myself and James were a year apart at school, and Mark McChrystal was there as well. So we got chatting about maybe doing a senior band after having a few underage bands, and would then started recruiting the likes of Michael and that into the group. I suppose we had a bit of underage success as well. In Derry, we were fortunate enough to get second in the under 18 Ceili band, and I suppose that kind of drove us on as well to start thinking about senior bands. So that's probably where it all began.
In terms of that underage group, I suppose some of the members then transferred over across into the Blackwater at some point in time. I see Michael Coney there.
Yeah, we had
Michael was a member of that band, I think, at the time.
Yeah, we had Arlene McCarlin as well. I've seen her.
Arlene also there, is she?
Arlene was a member of that band as well, and then of course we had yourself and Eugene McKenna as well.
I wasn't there that year.
You were there the year before.
I was there the year before.
We got rid of James and we got second, so that tells you all you need to know about James.
Age got the better of me. That's not the true story. I was no longer able to compete in that category. I was able to go and have a drink at that stage. So, that was how that worked out. But that's the oranges. And you mentioned there the Christian Brothers School, of course, the Centenary March. The centenary was the centenary of the Christian Brothers School as well. And the first year the Blackwater competed was 2015. Is that right in saying?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, in terms of the original lineup of the Blackwater, the lineup which we see on the stage was not the original lineup back in 2015, was it?
No, we had a slightly different lineup, so I'll just quickly run through the original lineup. We had myself and Michael Kern here beside me on accordions. We had George McAdam from Ballybay, County Monaghan on drums. We had Mark and Crystal on piano, as I said, for a moment. We had James over there in the corner on flute with another flute player, Paul Quinn. We had Lisa McKee from Derry on fiddle. We had Eugene McKenna. We had Rosie Ferguson from Newry, and we had Lydia Warnock from Leitrim. So that was the original lineup. It's changed a wee bit since that. We, as we said, recruited Michael Coney into the mix as well, and George McAdam's sister has joined us on fiddle since that as well.
Yeah, so a few changes over the years, but I suppose that's owing to different things, emigration maybe for a year, holidays, different things. I know you also featured Rachel Masterson on piano at one stage as well. Was that for 1 year?
Yeah, that's right. Rachel joined us on piano. Mark, I think, went to America, is that right? Yeah, Mark went off to America, and actually we were lucky enough to get second that year, so Rachel took home an Ireland medal with the Blackwater.
So Rachel Masterson, we also had Kiva Cairns for a number of years, 2 years maybe, 1 year?
1 year.
Yeah. That was
16.
16. Yeah, so a few changes in the lineup, but still a solid core there throughout the bases. And of course, you as leader of the band, maybe you describe your role as leader and what that involved in terms of tune choices, and what was the sort of things you looked out for a tune? What differentiates a session tune and a Ceili band tune, or what are you looking for there?
James might be diplomatic, call me a leader. I think he could have been called me dictator, or maybe worse at times. Yeah, well, I suppose we all pitched in on that front, and as the years went on, we learned what suited us and what didn't suit us. It's a steep learning curve, and I'm sure everybody can relate to that. You learn as you go, you make the mistakes, you say, well, that didn't suit us, that didn't work for us. It's hard to say exactly what makes a Ceili band tune until you hear it and the band itself plays it, you know that it suits your band. Obviously we're coming back to the original purpose of a Ceili band, it's for dance music, but it's got to be rhythmic and good enough to dance to. You've got to play it to that level as well. But I think courses for courses, different bands suit different tunes, and it takes a few years sometimes to work that out. So there's no particular style or genre or composer we were after, it was just what suited the band.
And one of the things that probably should have covered, of course, with the Knockmore as well. The Knockmore was quite unique in their sound and the fact that they had a concertina and a banjo as well. In terms of the Blackwater, maybe you take us through the lineup in terms of instrumentation.
Yeah, I suppose fiddles and flutes are a mainstay in most bands, in the modern era anyway. The back row is probably usually what alters between people, so you've either button accordions, piano accordions, quite rarely now actually, concertinas, and then occasionally you have a banjo, and very occasionally we see a set of pipes now as well. But yeah, that was our lineup. We had the button accordion, piano accordion, and 4 fiddles and no banjo this time, much to the sadness of George McAdam.
Perhaps the last All-Ireland winning band to have a pipe player in it would have been maybe the Tyrone Ceili band, would it have been? Or maybe there was one since that, was there?
No, I think it was.
Maybe the Tyrone with Pádraig Donlan. Yeah. Yes, of course, and Brendan McCann locally played with that band, and that evolved from the Sean Nugent tradition as well. I might ask yourself, Michael, coming into the Blackwater Ceili band or coming into any Ceili band, it would have been a change from you from, I suppose, a lot of solo playing, a lot of sessions playing. How did you adapt to having to learn tunes and learn variations and, I suppose, knit in so closely with other people and, to play in that rigid format?
Well, I suppose I remember 2014 when I was very fortunate to win the senior solo button accordion, and of course the same year as the guys here in the Knockmore won the bands, and after competing for year and year, and particularly with the Knockmore's accordion player Christopher, we used to compete a lot against each other, and Christopher of course won in 2013. I remember winning the solo and thinking to myself, thank God this is the end of my competition days, never again. And then literally at the autumn session, we had a pub in 5 Mile Town, as many of you would know. We used to have the sessions, and this was around the autumn winter 2014, start of 2015, when Ryan was putting the band together, and he said, we want you in the band. And I was thinking to myself, here was me hoping for a break after the competing, but straight into it again in 2015. But no, I always enjoyed the just the social gathering, particularly, and of course most of our early practices were in the pub. We were very fortunate to have that space there, and it was quite central for the musicians to gather. Very proud to be in the band, and of course linking back to the Francie Murphy era and the original origins of the Pride of Erin from 5 Mile Town. So it's to me, I sort of feel it's came full circle. So to be part of that, I really enjoyed. But you're on about the tunes, yes. I wouldn't be the quickest and the fastest to be picking and learning the variations, as Ryan would be. The dictatorship would come out sometimes. Mickey, would you play that again, play that right? But it really just, it was just great to fine tune and just to finesse the playing and to prepare, and it gave you something to aim towards as well. I suppose for me, the first year or two of the band was a bit of crack, and maybe Ryan mightn't like hearing me saying that, but it was great to be performing on the stage. But then when we get on to the famous other recall or joint in 2017, it was really from then that it really, the penny dropped with me. Geez, we've actually a very good chance of winning this and doing this. And then of course 2018 was the big year, and we never looked back since.
So you made it, your role in the band might have been more like what would you say, a creative director, looking after, I suppose, initially looking after the suits and making sure the dresses. Within Ceili bands, I suppose it's very important. Presentation is key, as you've seen from all the bands right through, from the Pride of Erin, the Knockmore and the Blackwater. Presentation has been very important right the whole way through. I know it was more blazers in your day, Seamus, and then the blazers evolved to the waistcoats. But I suppose that would have been one of the things you took a particular interest in, making sure you had a uniform that stood out, and when you played on stage, you'd be recognised as the Blackwater Ceili band without hearing a note.
Well, I suppose, yeah, and when I think of the bands before the Blackwater time, and particularly the male players, it was usually all black. I suppose that's the standard, you know, maybe the white shirt, the black trousers, if you want to go down the black waistcoat route as well, which a lot of bands did. But with us in 2015, we said, like, you know, let's try and, you know, jazz it up ever so slightly. And we went looking at suits, and it was Kevin Bo's brothers in Oma that fitted us out with the navy suits. And I explained to him, look, we're a band, we're starting out, we want to do something different. Of course the music is paramount, it's the most important, but as James rightly said, there is an element of presentation been very important as well. So we did get it out with the navy, and I suppose we sort of became synonymous with that. But it was really the female members of our band that were really remembered, I suppose, in those years. They had lovely navy dresses in the first year, but then thereafter they got themselves very snazzy, jazzy gold dresses and gold. Oh, you can see it, sorry, behind me, and the gold shoes. And that was really I remember some female adjudicators were like, you know, your music was fantastic, but wow, those women, and they look great. So to hear those little things, and it all, you know, played a part in the overall package that we tried to.
I was stressing over the selection. Mickey was looking for a set of brown shoes, which I haven't nailed. And you can see the priorities at that stage.
Mickey told me a good story recently that the particular pair of brown shoes that he wears, they had stopped making them, and there was only one shop in the north which had maybe 5 or 6 pairs left. He drove, I believe, Cookstown was it, and bought the 6 pairs. That's Michael Curran in brown shoes.
And I'm not even wearing brown shoes tonight, I wouldn't mind.
I'm disappointed, right? But moving forward, back to the competitions, 2015 was an important year for the Blackwater. Getting off to a solid start, getting the group together. We had the Fleadh Ceoil here in Dromore here in 2015, so the Blackwater actually took to the stage in 2015, isn't that right? There was actually, well, of course, Castledare for Anne-Marie McFleadh, that was our first initial performance, but then to Dromore here for the Ulster Fleadh, and that was actually quite an interesting Fleadh probably in 2015 as well, because there was maybe a few bands in the competition at that stage.
I think there's 4 in the Ulster that year, yeah.
There's no Ceili bands in the senior competition, unfortunately, in Ulster this year. There's plenty of junior bands, which Maggie could tell us about, but there's no senior bands. Who was the 4 bands that?
From memory, there was a band from Armagh.
Calvin was a band,
And Calvin and ourselves, and I think there was another one.
Right.
Donegal.
Donegal, of course, as well. And then progressed into the All-Ireland in 2015. 2015, how did you feel about that? Was it just a stepping stone to move forward?
In hindsight, when you look back on it, that was always going to be the year where you start to find your feet, and we were taking after these guys who had come off the back of a brilliant performance and victory the year before. So it was great to have that inspiration, but for us it was about getting our foot in the door, basically getting through to the All-Ireland and learning a few things from it. And obviously we were up against a an established band. Well, that was their first year, but they were established Ceili band musicians in the Shandrum Ceili band, who actually went on to win it in their first year.
In 2016, remind me, we went to Ennis, was that correct?
Yeah, went to Ennis again. Again, we would have thought we made a good strides forward in band territory. I think that might have been the most Ceili bands ever competed, I think, that night, 19 or 20. Because of the third places we're getting through that year. So it was a long night, and again the Shandrum came out victorious that night, so that was their second in a row in 2016.
2016. 2017, there was a lot of changes probably to the lineup in 2017. 2017, you lost your piano player, you said earlier. Any other changes to the lineup in 2017 or 2016?
Eugene had come back in at that stage, and then I think Ursula was joining us that year as well. So
and Michael Coney came in
2016.
2016, and we're fortunate to have Michael with us here this evening. Give Michael a big round of applause for that. Michael was the fastest Ceili band member to win an All-Ireland to finish the fun run this evening. So well done. Record time. 44 minutes. We got him back, and he looks a good enough colour anyway, so well done, Michael. So we brought Michael in, and of course you said a change of piano player. Changing, we know with Ronan here this evening, that must be a big deal, I suppose, in terms of a Ceili band. It changes the entire dynamic of the band, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's really the heartbeat of a Ceili band too, and changes the entire sound. And we found that, especially what's going from Mark to Rachel, there was a big style change there, and we had to adapt. And she would admit now that she had to adapt as well. And it really was a blessing in disguise. I think we would admit that at this stage, that it brought us on leaps and strides with our Ceili band.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic musician, Rachel Masterson, and then there's a question here at the front. Do you ever fall out? I'll put that to Ronan Warnock.
And how do you stay together? Maybe if you have a job in the morning or what, or you know.
Yeah, but I think we found, you see,
You just check on the board and do the band.
the trouble with a 10-piece band is having everybody for your practices first of all,
I know,
but then having them for performances. So that's where you have the versatility to be able to bring in other people that can slot in, because how many, it's going to happen where you're not going to be able to have everybody. Yeah, and we always kind of say with ourselves in the Knockmore that we started off as friends, and we actually remained as friends throughout that spell, and we still, we're all coming together hopefully now for Friday night, and it's... No, when it would come to practices, you might have had a passionate debate about what variation you were going to do or something like that. But that's all part of the creative process, and that was important. And I suppose with ourselves, we were all, well, I was, I suppose, the oldest member, but everybody was young and had ideas, and we wanted to do something different, I suppose. We wanted to make our mark and be remembered every time we competed, so I suppose we were kind of known to try and throw in an odd, thing that maybe some people would kind of roll their eyes at, but it helped, I suppose, get us noticed and eventually win, so. Oh yeah, there's many a time you didn't want to go to practice. But yeah, you always came out of the practice in good form, and that was what it was all about, so.
I suppose it's kind of infamous now what happened. Usually the convention, for anybody who goes to it knows that they call it out in reverse order, so third, second and first. And when the result was called out, we got a first and we got nothing else. So the first had celebrated and got off the stage, and everybody was left in limbo, so we had a tie for second. And if anybody knows the rules and regulations of the Fleadh, there isn't allowed to be a tie for second, but just the way it happened that year, I think it must be a northern thing. They didn't really want to send it up the road maybe. So they left it at that, and there was an infamous tie for second with the Knockmashee Ceili band from Sligo.
So after 2015 and 2016 obviously Ulster titles and medals, but in 2017, was that the first All-Ireland placing for the Blackwater Ceili band?
Yeah, that was our first medal, yeah.
Okay, to place second at that stage. So Much like I suppose the legacy of the Knockmore, when you placed second, did you feel at that stage there was a good hope the following year that you'd step on for the first place, I suppose?
Yeah, I think Maggie can probably relate to that. Once you get second, you think, right, this is it, do or die, this is our year, and we have to make strides here. But I suppose the small caveat of difference with us was we had tied with a band who had previously got 4 seconds in a row. So we were up against a band who had what they call 4.5 seconds, and we're saying, right, this is our year as well, this is do or die for us. So when it came to the following year, conventionally the second place might be the favourite band. There was kind of 2 bands there that might have been counted as the conventional favourites.
Okay, so a lot of drama that night, but I'm sure a good night as well to place second, and a good result based on the disappointment in 2015, 2016 to build upon that in 2017. 2018 maybe, Michael, starting off the year, or what was things like at that stage, practice wise? And
yeah, just when James says about the start of that year, I remember in January or February time, and a bit like the Pride of Erin and the Knockmore in some of their media performances, we were asked to do a Ceili House recording for RTE with the great Kieran Hanrahan. Of course, that was still broadcast on a Saturday night, and we had the recording in Tanya Tavern in 5 Mile Town, my parents' pub. And I remember we were playing great stuff that day. Like, that was only February 2018. So that was a good few months even before June, before the Tyrone Fleadh. But I remember playing, the music was very tight. I remember Kieran Hanrahan saying to us, "Geez lads, for a band at this stage of the year, you're sounding brilliant. You've such a good chance of going on to winning this." So that gave us a great confidence boost, and I remember hearing it back on the radio and it sounded great, and it was, we were delighted with that. And yeah, I don't think we did anything too different that we had in the previous years, but there was just, well, more practices for sure, but the manner in which we did them were very much the same. But there probably was a quiet confidence in us for going on and be able to do that. And I suppose a real turning point, and maybe I'll pass over to Ryan, we were fortunate to win the Ulster title in Castlewellan. And in recent years at the Fleadh, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, Fleadh TV is a very prominent part of the Fleadh now, and they do live broadcasts and they do TV shows from the provincial Fleadh and of course the weekend of the Fleadh. But a bonus for us winning the Ulster Fleadh in Castlewellan was that we were going to perform live on TV literally in an hour or so after that, and it was really after that performance that maybe spurred us on. But I might get Ryan to describe that a bit further.
I think Ronan was answering the question there from the lady whether bands ever have arguments or altercations. It's probably the closest we might have came, and I'm sure these lads don't mind us talking about that, because I think it was kind of a watershed moment. So as Mickey says, we were asked to play on TV, and we had an exchange of views about what we should play on TV, whether it should be our reel set for the All-Ireland that was 14 days away at this stage, or whether it should be something different. So we had an exchange of views, and we had a vote, and we said, right, we'll play these reels, we're all in it together, and everybody was happy. And I think that was probably a big turning point for the band, because it was a great performance on TV, and a lot of people maybe sat up and said, oh, this is the band to beat at this stage. So
okay, so very important, and a lot of people around the country were watching that programme, as you will all be watching the programme Sunday week, which is going out, and TG Carr will actually be here in the town on Saturday. Hopefully Dahi O'Shea will be here. You'll be able to see Dahi again, and all the TV crew and fantastic musicians throughout the town all weekend. But that was a big changing point. And also I should have hit on as well, we heard the Blackwater Ceili Band playing in March. That march was written by you, Ryan. What sort of a role did it play, or what was it a turning point in the performance as well? We think back to the Pride of Erin actually having their leader, Sean Nugent, who wrote their march as well when they won. So I suppose the link there as well. That was a very important. People took to the march well, something different.
yeah, I suppose it was something different. There's the same, there's a core group of marches there that a lot of bands were pulling from, obviously putting their own twist on it, but in terms of good quality, even what we would call Ulster tunes or Northern tunes, these lot had stolen all the good ones on us, so we had to come up and think of something different. So yeah, put pen to paper. Yeah, it took a while to get where we got to with that tune, but brought it one night to practice in 2017 and said, lads, what do you think of this? And we didn't know until we probably sat down and played it as a band that it was going to work for us, but it just did, and we kept it until 2018.
Yeah, and that tune was played by the Blackwater in 2018. So we spoke about the Ulster competition. The All-Ireland competition in 2018, the pressure was on, nerves were there, I'm sure, and everything else. But everything went to plan that day. You were happy with the performance, and lucky enough to be the first band from County Tyrone to win that title. What was the feeling like in the dome, I suppose, Michael and Ryan, after the competition?
The feeling before it wasn't too good, but the feeling after it was great. Yeah, we had such a crowd in that night. I think everybody was giving out they couldn't get Ceili band tickets because of the Blackwater. We had stocked them up, so we had a great crowd in that night, and sure, it was a great year to win it, because little did we know then. Well, we knew at that stage, but Tyrone were in the Ireland final at that stage, so we went on the following week, or 2 weeks I think time after we won, to play on RT's Up for the Match as well. The night before the All-Ireland final, Tyrone in Dublin. Unfortunately it didn't go our way that night, but
I hope Niall Slovin's not still here for Tyrone.
Yeah, that wasn't one to remember for the football.
It wasn't one to remember for the football, but one to remember for the music. And an absolutely electric atmosphere, I suppose, in the dome that night. So a fantastic night was had. There's the presentations of Michael Coney and George McGavin and everybody else. We were in good form. Aye, Francie Murphy is right. So the Brian Bresman is another one, isn't he? But moving forward, Michael, after winning the All-Ireland in 2018, after this year, Ryan spoke about the media performances. What was the next steps after that? What came thereafter? And I suppose what did the focus turn to when it moved away from competitions?
Well, definitely, as Ronan said earlier on, I think any winning band in the 12 months afterwards, you go through just a whirlwind of performances here, there and everywhere. We had a fantastic weekend in Leeds as well. We were asked over, so something similar to what the Knockmore guys did. Played the length and breadth of the country, whether it was a set Ceili or whether it was a concert or just a performance at a gig or whatever. But I suppose after winning, and we kind of knew that we weren't going back, so obviously previous to us winning was the famous Shandron Ceili band, and they did fantastic with their 3 in a row. Once we won it, we were happy to do what the Knockmore did as well, go out on a high. We've won it, we've pride of Tyrone, pride of Ulster, whatever you want to say, but our attention, I suppose, turned to the recording element. And for me personally, again, looking on the table and looking at the LPs of what the Pride of Erin did back in the 70s and 80s, we wanted to emulate and just put something down on record. So our attention turned to the recording. So in start of 2019, we got in contact with Donal O'Connor, fantastic musician and producer of Red Box Studios up in Belfast, and we got together up there and we put music down on record and songs, and we were fortunate enough to release a debut album in June 2019 called Music in the Valley. The Valley, of course, being the Clare Valley area where a lot of us were from and that surrounding area. So that was how 2019 ended up for us, following the win in 2018.
So a focus on performance and also recording as well. So I suppose performance, as a musician, performance always has to be a core element, because without performance, without people listening to you, what's the point to playing music, I suppose? The listeners, as we have here this evening, in such fantastic numbers, are a huge part of everything that we do as well. So in terms of performance, we spoke earlier, we heard a great clip of Margaret McElhone. What sort of role did singers play in performance, and then linking that into recording then thereafter?
Well, you talked about the old Ceili bands from a long time ago, and just one that springs to mind was the Old Cross Ceili band in East Tyrone. John O'Neill, great accordion player, part of that, and of course Philomena Begley, who needs no introduction in the world of singing. started out her musical career in that band. So, you know, and then of course with the 2 LPs of the Pride of Erin with the songs from the Nugent family members on that, you know, we weren't reinventing the wheel by having songs on the album. And of course, as Maggie said, with the Knockmore, their band, they were blessed with fantastic singers in the band, Maggie's sister Lorena, and of course Maria Connolly from Newtown Butler. So what we were doing was no different than what a lot of Ceili bands did previously, and in fairness, a lot of what bands recorded. So it was a natural thing for us to include some songs. We like to think that we can read our listeners very well, and we know the people out here, as much as you all love to hear the tunes and you'd sit all night listening to jigs and reels, you also like to hear a bit of variety and the odd song thrown in the mix as well. So that was why we decided to do that. And again, looking at the Pride of Erin stuff and what they did and the songs, you know, every other track or every third track. So that's how that came about.
So in some recent history, Ryan, you spent, well, I suppose with COVID happened as well. It was a major feature, I suppose, because the Blackwater was early in their career, really, in terms of when we think about the Pride of Erin and the time they were on the road, and the Knockmore, the time they were on the road. We had a couple of years off the beaten track with COVID. Maybe Ryan, you might take us through maybe some of the things, I suppose, that we done maybe in response to COVID, and how that time was for everybody, and how it was, I suppose, for the medical people on the front line too.
Yeah, I suppose it was a difficult few years for everyone, but none more so than the traditional music community, because we are at our best when we're in situations like this and everybody's together playing, and the Blackwater were no different. So it was difficult for us. I suppose we were able to get together in a virtual sense at one stage and put together a real performance that did quite well on social media, and the purpose of that was to raise money for people on the front lines, and we raised lots of money for local hospitals and that at the time to provide much needed care packages basically to the people who are working hard on the front line in Derry, Cavan and Enniskillen as well, that we supplied that stuff to. So that was a worthwhile cause and something that we were delighted to take part in.
Yeah, but I suppose there was a number, that was one event, and then there was a drive-in concert as well, which was held in Anala. There was a track with Ciara Fox for people that were out, I suppose, out abroad as well. How did those events... Come on, Martin. How did those events over the lockdown period, I suppose, influence what came after there in terms of performance and recording that followed on?
Yeah, I suppose the people that we're collaborating with, you know, at that stage, like Ciara Fox, and we did a lovely song with her, and then we ended up recording together with her and the band. I suppose there was some downtime there as well. It was able to give us some time to put some new music together, and once we were able to get back together, we were able to start playing some new music and ultimately record it on a second album as well.
Yep. And I said earlier you actually emigrated for a while yourself, but you're back home now.
Yes, just back the last few weeks from Australia for a year. So I came especially for this night, as James said. And he's booking me a return flight on Monday morning. So that's courtesy of the Ulster Fleadh.
Speak to Louise.
No, I'm going nowhere. Back for good now. So.